Now, they also talk about a delta. Oh, this is a delta, and you really can't, they shouldn't really move out. Now, that's what the city's telling me, that this is a delta, and people shouldn't really live here. That's another scenario that I heard. Now, all these things, you can put them all in a bag and then throw them over. What are we doing? This is what has to be done. I don't care if you get 10 engineers, and we're waiting and waiting. We could have done this last fall, and it'd been over by now. How long are we going to wait for another flood? I've gone through on Main Street since 1980, about 6, 7 floods. I'm tired of them, and nobody seems to do anything about it.
And that's why we're holding these meetings.
Now we can hold meetings.
Are you planning on doing, or have you done any studies on your floodplain enhancement above the Stony Clove Bridge?
We
Because
looked at that.
doesn't the water come from above the bridge and get into Main Street that way?
Yes?
It does.
That's very good.
And we did look at some floodplain enhancement there. There's not a lot of room.
Yeah, well,
because on the
you
right-
end up taking out the road.
Yeah, there's the road and there's a steep bank on the right bank. But by reducing, by reducing some water surface elevations down here, it does relieve flows a bit and relieve flooding as you go up Stony Clove. Not a whole lot. And we tried some floodplain enhancement going upstream here. We looked for spaces where there was enough room to do that. But there's not a lot. It's very narrow and confined in there, both by the road and by the steep bank.
Just the dredging on the surface, but not dredging on the road.
We didn't run a dredge scenario. Like you're talking about deepening the channel?
You know, what they did after the last flood,
We did that in Phoenicia. Rob and Eric did it up to the, almost to the firehouse. But my father's dead 35 years. He used to say they have to dredge from all the way up to past the school at that time. Now it's even further.
These are the engineers that did that design for that.
Yeah. That doesn't
I want to follow up. So all
relate
this,
with me.
I mean, whatever proposal you recommend and accept, so you really only, are you only talking about the flooding in Phoenicia itself, not on High Street, not on South Street, or just in the town itself?
Well, as you
And
can
I mean,
see,
the town will be fine, but everyone else will be gone.
as you can see, by the reason sorry, go ahead.
Again, your section of the stream there, what's happening is that your elevation is so close to the base elevation of the bottom of the stream bed. I mean, that's really what's going on there. And if you look, Main Street and everything, their relationship to what the bed of the esophagus is, and that's why we're seeing such minimal amounts. But know that this is going to be based, again, on a benefit-cost analysis. So the more homes or the more structures that are affected, the better it is for us. So that's why it's kind of focused on a more populous area. It's not that we didn't go extend. We can extend the study area up there. But then if the study area goes a half a mile and costs us $500,000 or another $1 million, but only affects 10 more homes, that benefit-cost analysis is going to drop dramatically.
Well, I think what's going to happen if you don't do subsidy, people will never be able to sell their house. People don't want to move them.
Well, again, with those
It's
minimal...
tough selling a house in a floodplain.
I'm curious to see what Mark comes up with the elevation changes on that section. Again, you can see there's minimal change, and it could be up to a foot of change in depth. That's going to affect your flood insurance rate. Again, that's part of it.
Between High Street and the creek is slowly disappearing, right?
Again, it is the floodplain, as Michelle pointed out. You know, this is that stream is so pinched with the embankments that it has right now. It needs that freedom to go. Again, water will always seek the path of least resistance. So it's looking to get onto that floodplain and maybe move the channel over onto that floodplain. well, we're resisting it, and we're pushing it back, and we're keeping our road there, and we're putting rock up. And, you know, Einstein used to say, what was it? Repeating the same action over and over again and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. I mean, we can't keep doing the same things. We're trying to find a better way. Again, we can bring into looking at the high-speed section.
Einstein never
We can look
came
at
here, though.
all these things that we're trying to do, but ultimately, these projects that they're showing are affecting the most people that we can affect with a singular project or multiple projects.
Have the best possibility of being funded.
I don't have an example here, but in Mount Tremper, we looked at some floodplain enhancement scenarios on the Beaver Kill. Fairly modest compared to what I showed here. You know, I think it was about 700 feet long. And it did a great job of removing this one home from flooding. But the thing costs a lot of money to build, and just it's not cost effective for removing a small number of homes. You know, so as we decide where to try these scenarios, as Rob said, they have to impact many homes in order to be cost effective. Otherwise, I mean, you know, there's no solution to reducing the flooding there. Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to make a mention. In town, we have that bridge over the Stony Cove.
Yes.
I had gotten with the engineer that was doing some repair work there,
Yes.
and I talked to her, it's a gal, really nice gal, smart as a whip. And I talked to her about stream bed stabilization, stabilizing the migration of those cobbles and the rock, where it was building up underneath the bridge, causing it an obstruction to the water flow going down Main Street.
That was Jessica Louisa. She's the one who did all this 2D modeling.
Yeah. So anyway, what was done, if you go to the bridge and look upstream, you'll see some stabilizers in the creek.
Yes.
Those big heavy rocks in there. And they were somewhat like what they did in CCC days in the 30s. In fact, I go back quite a ways. And a guy named Floyd Smith used to fill me in on a lot of what was going on as far as the stream dynamics. And a big thing that he made a point about was stream bed stabilization. And if you go in there like you're talking about digging out along the side of the creek, you're going to destabilize all that dirt. When the water flows down, it's going to erode the hell out of it. Now, our rock and those cobbles in there, somewhat like the tourists up here. You can, because they're all rounded. They're not natural in their natural condition. They've been rolled down the creek. And if you minimize the migration of the gravel and the rock, you minimize the buildup like there was over there in the town. And if you put a stream bed stabilization thing like the gal did right above stream, you have a nice trout pool for people that walk across the bridge. They can look upstream and see what trout might be there. And you can also see how now, above that stabilization, how the basic level of the stream has risen about a foot or so. It's minimized the migration of that stream bed stuff. Because like I'm thinking, you can dig that creek out until the cows come in. But because the source of that stuff you're digging out is these mountains. And the only way you can stop that from happening is either stream bed stabilization or get rid of the mountains. And there ain't no getting rid of them mountains. And if you can get a program or something going to stabilize the stream bed, we'll get more insect life growing under the rocks and that. You go there now and look along the Esopus or on the Stony Cove, and you pick up a rock and there's nothing growing under there. There's none of these caddis flies and trout flies growing there. It's sterile. And this is a big thing up here. I mean, I remember the hatches that we used to have. I mean, they were magnificent. And the trout in the stream in the 50s. We don't have that anymore because there wasn't stream bed stabilization, and people abused the stream banks, enhancing erosion under the mistaken idea that dredging, which to me is a fool's game, you go dredge it out, next month it's going to be back, comes down the mountain. You know, gravity is at work, Mother Nature is there. This stuff is coming down, and it's traveling, it's migrating, and you know it's migrating because all the rocks are rounded. There's nothing natural in them rocks or the way they come from the side hill. So that's my thought anyway. A good solid stream bed stabilization program, enhance the trout fisheries and minimize the disruption or like making a wound in your body, cutting it and enhancing the damage from a flood condition. They'll erode that soft dirt rather than trying to go over stable rock and solid trout pools. You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Has this been considered or worked over?
Well, it's been up in Chichester in the last few years. Up by Silver Hollow and up by between the Chichester 214 bridge by the post office all the way up to Silver Hollow and above Silver Hollow. Have you been up there in the last few years?
Yeah.
Have you seen the stream stabilization projects that have been done up there?
No, I didn't
Haven't?
notice. I noticed the one right above the
You know,
Phoenicia
millions of
bridge.
dollars have been spent up there since Irene stabilized the banks and stopped the source of all that gravel. Just take it right up there, take a look at it. There's a question.
I don't think we disagree. What the channel, the floodplain enhancement results in a channel that's more stable because you're properly sizing the channel to convey low flows and convey bankful flows. It's only the flood flows that get up on this enhanced floodplain. And that area doesn't convey gravel most of the time. Most of the gravel is in the main channel. It's usually finer sediments that get deposited onto the floodplain. It's really what it's doing is reclaiming floodplain in many cases that was historically filled or encroached upon. You had a question there.
Yeah, you were talking about removing the gravel banks, the gravel bars in the middle of the streams.
Yes.
I've got a suggestion. Wouldn't it make more sense to bulldoze them over towards Route 28 and the railroad tracks and save the deterioration of the banks more? And then maybe then the stream would go over that way further away from the road and the railroad tracks. If you would, instead of removing that gravel in the middle of the stream, bulldoze it over to the edge, to where it's eroding Route 28 tons.
Problem with that is those material is small enough to be moved during high flows. So if you put it up against the wall there, it's going to move again. If you're going to stabilize that bank, you want to use stone that's not going to move.
Well, there's some good-sized stones out in there. It's not all just little gravel. I think it makes more sense to just shove it over and protect the roads than it is to remove it. That's my thought.
I think you had a question here.
Well, it was just a suggestion. You talked about in Phoenicia doing some mitigation of basements and raising buildings. Maybe what you could do is include the area on High Street for these people that are flooded regularly, that in the long haul that might be helpful, and include them, and maybe on the other side of Bridge Street also.
Yes. I think, the process we go through here is to explore ways of modifying bridges, modifying the channel to reduce flooding. But when we finish our final report, there's sort of another section that for recommendations for areas, and I should have said this when you asked the question, that for everybody else who doesn't gain much benefit from those projects, and it's those exact things. It's elevating above the base flood elevation. It's floodproofing, and in some cases, it's relocating.
Hey, you're talking about this, mitigation and benefits.
Yeah.
Couldn't somebody tell the town not to allow more building in that floodway? In the last few years, there's been some programs or stuff. There's buildings put up right in the floodway. I noticed you didn't use the word floodway, which is out of the main channel.
Yes.
And this, what you're essentially talking about, removing all that material, is in the floodway, isn't it? Is that what it is, or would that term describe that area? And could you perhaps mention to the town board not to allow, or the planning board or whatever it is, not to let them put more buildings there which are going to deflect? Right in front of my house, there's a huge building put up that's going to deflect that is deflecting a heck of a lot of water
That
towards
will
the
be a
town.
recommendation in our report. We do a review of the floodplain zoning, and we comment on it in our report. And
Yeah,
certainly
You're just
recommend.
making it worse.
Mark, I can address that. Again, it's been a local law since it was adopted in, I believe, 1978, our flood ordinance, which restricts development within the floodway. And to correct you, the floodway actually does kind of mirror the main channel of the stream for the most part. It is the tightened area of the floodplain. The floodplain is the wider area. The floodway is the more direct. If you look on there, it's the darker blue channel that's running through there. It's where the higher velocities and deeper channel is going.
Yes, in fact.
Yeah, the day of the storm, the Esopus was already flooded before the storm started. Did you know that? It was it couldn't take no more water before we even had the storm. That's because they kept letting water out.
No,
Yeah.
no.
I was looking at it
So
myself.
the tunnel shut down during the flood. What he's referring to is that we had a good solid day of rain.
Water was up to the top.
And then Irene actually hit.
Yeah.
So we were inundated, and that was part of our problem. Again, we recognized that soils were inundated and the water was just going to flood. So,
Even up further, they shut down all the campuses.
I don't think a lot of people understand that extreme dimensioning. And I don't think a lot of people realize that you have the ability to calculate the proper dimension, flow rate, width, depth of the stream to actually stabilize it. Could you explain the concept of stream dimension?
Yeah, and it gets a bit at what to do. I think this is what this gentleman was saying. It's,
Right.
you just go back up a bit. This is often called a multi-stage channel, and this would be what would be designed here. And basically, as Mark was saying, it includes a low-flow channel, so that during low flows, you don't have a big, wide, shallow channel and all the fish cook out there. You have a low-flow channel to convey low flows, concentrate flows during low flows. Then you have here's the near bench, you have sort of a wider channel that conveys normal flows. And then you have a bank-full channel. And a bank-full channel conveys a flood that might happen every year or every 2 years. And that channel is sized to convey those flows and convey sediment. Its width, its depth, its width to depth ratio is sized to convey the normal flows, transport sediment, but then it's when flows exceed that bankful event and flood onto the floodplain, which we would be lowering so that it was more connected with the river. Those are only wet during flood events. So, as I said, these areas could be used for other purposes, not buildings, but recreational purposes, and then they convey flood flows. So when I talk about floodplain enhancement, I don't just mean excavating these areas. I also mean creating an active channel, the regular channel that's wet most of the time, that is stable, that transports sediments. So there's a bit of complexity to this design. It's not just excavating the floodplain.
But also make the point that each one of these interplays flow rate, dimensionality, depth, and so on. It's well understood how each one impacts the other.
Right, that is right.
Quick question. I get the floodplain concept, but my question is, if, there are already some wooded areas alongside that you said would need to be taken out,
Yes.
but yet the floodplain enhancement concept there does have these large trees. Like, what's the difference between the effect on, say, flooded waters on trees like that in your design and the ones that are already there in the little wooded areas that would be cleared out? I'm not sure well, I don't understand, like, how the floodplains as designed like that would be more effective than kind of the wooded areas are already there now with trees, for example.
Well, because you're lower, it's at a much lower elevation.
So we'd have a lot more dirt and ground.
This line represents a much higher elevation. The floodplain's way up higher now. We'd be lowering it. I mean, ideally what you'd want to do is lower it and put all the forest back again, really, but that's not possible. We'd have to plant it, and it would be vegetated. Yeah, Rob?
Well, perhaps, just to give relative information, MMI is working on LFAs in other communities. I spoke with Dixie Baldry, who's the supervisor of Lexington. You guys are working in Lexington,
Yes.
correct? What were their ideas that came out of their LFA?
They, we ran a lot of similar scenarios. We ran a deep bridge scenario, we ran a bridge replacement scenario, and we ran a floodplain enhancement scenario. And the floodplain enhancement scenario was a couple of configurations, on the right bank, on the left bank, upstream of the bridge, downstream of the bridge. And ultimately, the one that has the most momentum right now is fairly similar to this, where there's a combination of floodplain enhancement and a bridge replacement. It's a smaller scale than what we're showing here.
Okay, moving on. You were involved in Pratteville, but I know I just drove through there.
Yeah.
Yesterday. Their approach seems to be similar with floodplain benching. I know DOT has spoken to them about expanding and lengthening their bridge, as well as elevating and filling in their basements. Are these the same scenarios, again, that we're talking about here and in Lexington?
Yeah.
And I don't see a dredge scenario in Pratteville either.
No.
Margaretville
We
is
evaluated those and they weren't effective.
Margaretville is currently heading on an LFA, correct?
Yes.
Margaretville, Middletown area, Fleischman's.
Yeah.
Again, these same concepts keep reappearing as the most beneficial, and that's what I'm trying to get at. That every one of our communities are in the same boat. We're all trying to figure it out, but we keep coming up to the same solution. It sounds very drastic and different. And yes, there's going to be things that need to be moved, as somebody pointed out, encroachment on the floodway. Now I'm going to say that encroachment on the floodway occurred long before our time. And that's part of the issue that we're dealing with. So now we're living in it. Now we need to figure out, we need to elevate. Again, I'm seeing the same scenarios in all the towns around us, and everybody's going through the same thing. Do we dredge? And the dredging keeps coming up as a repetitive act that is not going to be beneficial, except for a bankful event, which isn't going to affect any structures.
And just to give you an example outside, these are LFAs. We're also working on some projects in the Mohawk Valley. This is not the DEP watershed, these are not LFAs. It's a similar process. We met with people from the town, elected officials, people who had been flooded. Everybody wanted to build walls, reinforce the banks. We did a lot of analysis, and it wasn't going to help. And we're proposing something, and now we're bringing it to final design, similar to this. It's reconnecting the floodplain. It's floodplain enhancement. It's moving a handful of structures that are frequently flooded. And it's going to greatly reduce flooding for the rest of the village of Mohawk and the town of German Flats.
And just to add, again, one step further with the floodplain development, also under the regs, it's not just recreational trail that we're looking at, but campsites can remain, RV parks, so on and so forth, are allowed to be established within the floodplain to remain it as an active commercial entity within the town and provide an asset to the economy.
Yeah, there's a number of acceptable uses in those areas, just not during a flood.
Before we go further, just I see people starting to leave. If you have questions or comments, please send them either to myself at shandakensupervisor@yahoo.com, send them through the website to the town clerk. We will forward them to the flood group as well as our engineering group, and we will look at what things are out there or what maybe we didn't see or maybe somebody hadn't suggested before or focusing on. But absolutely, we will still continue to look at other options if you have new options for us.
Did you, what's your analysis of what was done in the Stony Clove heading upstream from the Main Street Bridge after Irene, where they tried to rechannel the banks and there was some pulling it? Is that something that's not being, is that a long-term fix? Is that something that's going to, is that part of your modeling, doing that, or was that considered to be not effective? Or?
That was considered to be effective, and that's, those sorts of situations where you've got sediment accumulating right under a bridge, and a design that addresses that is.
So will that need to be repeated periodically over 50 years?
I would think so. I mean, I wasn't involved in that design, so.
Well, I was just wondering if that's part of your recommendation, that type of thing be monitored and.
It's the type of thing, when I talk about designing this channel, that you'd see in the active channel. It would be designed to convey the sediments. It would require little maintenance.
The only reason why I'm asking this specifically is because, from what I understood, the floodplain enhancement on the Stony Clove was closer to Main Street and didn't go up as far as the project that Rob was involved in doing. So I was wondering, was not that part of the floodplain? The channel itself, I think, was worked on after Irene, further upstream than than the area that I think you called floodplain enhancement for Stony Clove. Maybe I'm wrong.
That might be a little misnomer. So when we had the floods, again, I'll remind you that we had the floods of October 2010, the flood of December 2010. These were 10 to 25-year events. So here you had 10 to 25-year events within 2 months of each other. So when we went to the DEC said, we're not going to do dredging, we're not going to give you a permit for dredging, we're not going to allow it, blah, 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 blah. We basically had to make the argument, we understood that work that Malone and McBroom provided, the engineering service, and plus with the assistance of the DEP paying for it, following those first 2 floods before Irene, we were able to convince DEC that there are some benefits. Okay, it won't carry the full load of a 100-year flood, because everybody goes to the standard of 100-year flood, because that's what FEMA wants all the time to justify funding and whatnot. But knowing that it minimizes the risk for the 25 and for the 50-year floods, to where we made the argument, the DEC was saying that it will fill in eventually during the higher events. Now, DEP and the Ashokan Water Stream Management Program, Ulster County Soil and Water Conservation District, they are continuing to monitor that area to see what the gravel extent, the migration of sediments through that area, to see what's going on and whether it is working or not working. So far, any reports we've got is that it has been beneficial. It is continuing to do what it was intended to do, which is migrate the sediment under that bridge so it doesn't build the cobble. Following Irene, again, we were just still working on that permit, and we had a very limited scope because of the area. It was defined basically by the DEC. Following Irene and seeing the cobble that landed there, that's where we were able to argue along with Malone and McBroom. Jim McBroom was right there on site arguing with DEC about, we need to extend this up channel much further. So that's where it goes from, this went beyond what was originally planned in that issue, just because of Irene's depth. Then what occurred is, halfway through that project, Lee hits the following week to where we have to scramble to get the equipment out of the stream. But yes, that's the kind of things we're looking at, and what's going, that's part and parcel of all this, whether it be the floodplain benching, the remodification of the stream channel itself, but also get those stream structures in place to help the migration go under that Bridge Street.
With my experience living along that is that I haven't seen the water rising nearly as high underneath the bridge. And there have been some rain events that have been.
We also have to add, there's been, again, millions of dollars of work that we've had accomplished, again, through all our partners up in Chichester, which has greatly diminished the amount of sediment and turbidity. Again, you'll notice we're not getting this mucky brown out of the stony clove. It's not that yoo-hoo that we've been seeing for the past couple of years. It's still going to have that because of erosion and clay banks that are exposed. But it's minimizing to the best part, and we'll address it as best we can. Again, it's nature. Things will fall apart eventually. So
That project too was also extended downstream to the Esopus. Initially, it wasn't permitted to go all the way through the Esopus. We extended downstream and we monitored from the Esopus all the way up to about the Parish, for cross sections after they were bankfull. We've only had, how many bankfull events since they were?
Maybe they have one, maybe one.
Maybe two bankfull events. So we haven't had any significant high water amounts that